Nancy's childhood friend, Simon, killed my parents in a drunk driving accident. I wanted to report it to the police, but Nancy blindfolded me and took me to an underground chamber. For 3 years, I endured various torments without seeing daylight. After each round of torture, I would hear a cold, chilling female voice. Zion, do you still hate him? Until that day, when I lay on the icy floor, begging pitifully into the phone. I don't hate him anymore, I don't. On the other end of the line was Nancy's hearty laughter. The day she came to get me out, I avoided her embrace. She stood there stunned for a long time. When I numbly asked her for a divorce, she went mad. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. In the damp and gloomy basement, I sat in the corner with my injured leg. The slippery wall soaked my shirt. As the door opened, letting in a beam of light, I instinctively shielded my eyes. Hearing footsteps, I unconsciously tried to shrink further into the corner. Sir, Miss Harding sent me to fetch you. I glanced up at the approaching figure. It was Nancy Harding's longtime employed bodyguard. I lowered my gaze and responded with a faint, "All right." I struggled to stand, limping a few steps forward. The bodyguard's face was filled with shock. "Sir, your foot." My hand tightly gripped the seam of my trousers as I lowered my head. "It got hit by a cabinet earlier. Might be a fracture." The bodyguard looked at me with surprise, his eyes widening. "Why didn't you tell Miss Harding?" I gave a bitter smile, not answering him. What was there to say? Even if I had told her, would Nancy Harding have let me out to see a doctor? Or would she have called a doctor for me? "Let me help you walk, sir." The bodyguard came forward to support me, his face a mix of emotions. We had barely left the basement when I saw Nancy Harding and Simon Layton getting out of a car. "Nancy, I told you he'd definitely act pitiful to make you feel sorry for him. Look, he's even making others help him walk such a short distance." Nancy Harding looked in our direction upon hearing this. Though she said nothing, her eyes were full of satisfaction. She quickly walked towards me and, just as she got close, suddenly opened her arms. But I violently flinched, hastily avoiding her embrace. I curled up, seemingly oblivious to the intense pain in my leg. "Please don't hit me anymore. Please stop. I'm sorry, I truly am." Nancy Harding's arms remained outstretched, her face filled with disbelief. She slowly lowered her arms, standing still in front of me. "What's going on here?" she questioned the bodyguard beside me. The bodyguard, also startled by my reaction, only just regained his senses upon hearing Nancy Harding's inquiry. "Sir, Nancy!" Simon Layton suddenly called out, and Nancy Harding instinctively turned her head in his direction. The bodyguard's words caught in his throat, forcibly swallowed back. "Zion Bailey, you're not holding a grudge against Nancy for keeping you here to reflect, are you? Putting on this act to make her feel guilty? Come on, stop pretending. Since you've admitted your mistake, Nancy and I have already decided not to pursue the matter of you falsely accusing me." Simon Layton emphasized the words "the matter" heavily. In the next moment, I seemed to snap out of my daze and stop trembling. Simon Layton let out a light chuckle. "See, what did I tell you, Nancy?" I didn't get up, still crouching on the ground. Nancy Harding's voice suddenly turned cold. She spoke from above me, her tone indifferent. "Zion Bailey, hasn't 3 years been enough time for you to reflect? Come on, Nancy, don't be angry. It's almost time for our appointment with Mr. Cooper." "We should go now," Simon Layton said. Nancy Harding saw me still crouching on the ground. She clutched her Hermes bag tightly and snapped at me in exasperation. "Zion Bailey, you're such a wimp. Look at Simon, and then look at yourself. For the past 3 years, it's been Simon who's been by my side, helping me. If it weren't for him, I would have collapsed long ago. Zion Bailey, just look at the state you're in now. Do you really think you're still worthy of me?" With those words, she took Simon's arm and turned to leave. Simon shot me a mocking smile. His lips silently formed the word, "loser." I watched them leave together, my whole body trembling. "Sir," What happened to your little finger? The bodyguard asked. I slowly lowered my head and looked at the little finger of my right hand. After 3 years apart, Nancy had only glanced at me briefly before leaving. She didn't even notice the oddity in my gait, let alone my strangely twisted right pinky finger. I smiled bitterly. It's nothing, just a badly healed fracture. I think I should take you to the hospital, sir. The bodyguard helped me to my feet. My body felt completely drained, and I had to lean my entire weight on him. Simon had only come into Nancy's life 3 years ago. I had always known that Nancy had a childhood friend, a boy she'd grown up with. Later, when that boy's family ran into some trouble, they sent him abroad. For all those years after, Nancy never dated anyone, nor did she have any ambiguous relationships with any men. I knew she was waiting for him, and I was waiting for her. During those years, my family introduced me to many girls, but I politely declined them all. I remained so chaste that my parents almost thought I might be gay. Until that day when Nancy came running to find me in the pouring rain. Zion, I'm done waiting. Do you have someone you want to marry? She asked. If not, how about me? I was so excited I could barely contain myself, and I hugged her tightly. Nancy had no idea how much I loved her then. I gave her everything, showering her with endless love, indulgence, and care after we got married. As time passed, everything I had given finally started to pay off. But it all changed when Simon reappeared. I had found an eyewitness who could prove that it was Simon who had driven the car that hit my parents. Moreover, he had been drunk driving and fled the scene, afraid of being framed for a death he didn't cause. So he repeatedly ran over my parents. But Nancy refused to believe it. She vouched for him, claiming that Simon had been with her the entire night. In the end, even the witness changed their statement. I was left alone and helpless, branded as a madman jealous for love. I'll never forget that day when I rushed to the hospital and saw two cold, stiff bodies, their features beyond recognition. And I'll never forget how Nancy deceived me, luring me to an underground chamber where she cruelly imprisoned me. Zion, you're too agitated. You need to calm down, she had said. What happened to cause these injuries? The doctor asked with a frown, glancing at the bodyguard beside me. Are you a relative of the patient? The bodyguard reluctantly nodded. Why did you wait so long to seek treatment? Even if we realign this pinky finger, it won't fully recover to its original state, the doctor said. And what happened to your leg? I slowly raised my head and looked at the bodyguard beside me. I knew he was under Nancy's orders. I couldn't say a word about the underground chamber. Otherwise, Nancy would never tell me where she had buried my parents. The bodyguard dropped me off at the mansion and left on his own. Before opening the door, I clearly saw the password he entered. It wasn't the old password for this house, but Simon Layton's birthday. I limped inside, looking around. Everything seemed the same as it was 3 years ago, yet somehow different. 2 pairs of slippers at the entrance, one for a woman, Nancy's, and one for a man, Simon's. In Nancy's bedroom, there were 2 pillows. In the wardrobe, her clothes were on the left, Simon's on the right. In the bathroom, 2 toothbrushes and cups. Men's toiletries, bottles and jars of all sizes. Everything was telling me that Nancy and Simon had long been sleeping together. As I heard the door close, I walked out of the room that no longer belonged to me. 2 figures were entwined tightly, kissing passionately in the dim moonlight. Click! I turned on the living room light. Nancy's flushed face was full of shock. She instinctively pushed Simon away. When did you get back? Nancy rubbed her forehead. I had too much to drink. If Simon hadn't brought me home, I don't know how I would have escaped those old boozers. Then her face changed to an expression of reproach. Zion, you should have been the one doing all this. If you hadn't been so crazy back then, I wouldn't have had such a hard time these past few years. I stood motionless, listening to her endless complaints, until Simon came out of the kitchen with a cup of hot water. Have some hot water to soothe your throat. Simon's gentleness, compared to my current disheveled state, made him seem more like a caring, attentive husband. Nancy rolled her eyes at me again and sighed heavily. She drank the water Simon had brought in one gulp. Simon's been looking for a flat recently. He'll be staying with us until he finds one. Just when Nancy thought I wouldn't respond, I spoke softly. I know. His things are all over your bedroom. Nancy's expression froze, and she accidentally dropped the glass, shattering it on the floor. You went into my bedroom? Her suddenly serious and low voice, along with the sound of breaking glass, seemed to instantly transport me back to that dark, moldy room from the past. My mind went blank. Instinctively, upon hearing her words, I wanted to apologize first. I'm sorry. Nancy stood there stunned for a few seconds, then frowned and slowly walked towards me. Zion, what's wrong? I was just asking. I didn't speak. Instead, Simon's soft sigh answered her. Oh, Zion, you really don't need to be like this. I didn't realize you hated me so much. Even after 3 years, you're still like this. You didn't lie to Nancy just to get out, did you? Nancy seemed to suddenly have been enlightened by his words. Is that so, Zion Bailey? I've told you countless times. I was at a business dinner that night, and Simon was with me. Why won't you believe it? Do you know you almost got Simon killed? His promising career was ruined because of your murderer accusation. He was fired from his company and can't even go out without being pointed at and whispered about. Do you have any idea how much you owe him? How could you be so horrible? You have no idea. Because of you, Simon almost committed suicide by jumping off a building. My silence finally angered Nancy Harding. She picked up the glass from the table and hurled it at me. The glass shattered on impact. Blood slowly trickled down my forehead. She looked up at me across the room, shocked. Why didn't you dodge? Dodge? How could I? Wasn't it her order? I couldn't dodge. If I did, she would have my parents' bones fed to the dogs. Nancy Harding always followed through on her threats, didn't she? She once said to me, Zion Bailey, if you dare spread any nasty rumors about me, I'll make sure you suffer a miserable death. And in that dark room, just because Simon Layton lost a few strands of hair over that incident, she had people beat me several times. When Simon Layton couldn't eat, I wasn't allowed to either. Not only was I denied food, but my water intake was also restricted. When Simon Layton nearly jumped off a building, she had my legs and arms broken. The blood kept flowing. I blinked, feeling dizzy. Nancy Harding rushed to my side. Simon, quickly bring the iodine and gauze. Simon Layton stood still. Nancy, this is exactly what Zion wants. By standing there and letting you hit him, he's successfully making you feel guilty. Nancy Harding froze. The hand holding my arm suddenly loosened. After a long while, she spoke in a low voice. Zion Bailey, how childish can you be? Do you think you can manipulate me like this? You've been out for so long. Have you apologized? If you sincerely apologize to Simon Layton right now for your past rudeness and carelessness, I'll forgive you and let this matter go. Simon Layton sneered. Nancy, is a simple apology really enough? Nancy Harding gave me a complex look. Then she nodded firmly. Zion Bailey, get on your knees and apologize. A drop of blood from my forehead suddenly fell onto Nancy Harding's hand. It felt like scalding hot water. She instinctively pulled away. Simon Layton stepped in front of me, pulling Nancy to his side. He took out a tissue and carefully wiped her hand. Zion, what are you waiting for? Nancy Harding's face looked terrible. I numbly raised my head. After a while, I slowly took a deep breath. I can apologize and I can kneel, but I want to know, where are my parents buried? Nancy Harding was caught off guard by the question. Simon Layton's eyes seemed to dart around. After a long time, Nancy Harding frowned and looked at Simon Layton. Simon, I remember you arranged this. Where were they buried? Simon Layton's evasive gaze made me sense something was wrong. I stepped forward and gripped his hand tightly. Where did you bury my parents? Let go of me first. I gripped even tighter. Tell me, where did you bury my parents? Simon Layton's dark face suddenly twisted into an eerie smile. Zion, why do I feel like you hate me even more now? You're not planning to pretend to please Nancy, and then find a random car to run me over. Are you? Nancy Harding, standing to the side, suddenly widened her eyes. Zion Bailey, let go. I remained unmoved. Nancy Harding shouted. I said, let go. Zion Bailey, do you want to go back and reflect on your actions again? Go back? I don't want to go back. I suddenly released my tight grip. Tiredly, I looked at the woman standing opposite me. Nancy Harding, let's get a divorce. The room suddenly fell silent. Nancy Harding looked at me in disbelief. The expression on her face gradually cracked. Divorce? What kind of joke is this? I just told you to let go, and now you want a divorce? Didn't you see that you hurt Simon? Zion Bailey, what are you trying to do? I pressed my lips together, staring unblinkingly at the woman I once loved deeply. Every day in that dark room, I felt like I was better off dead. I simply couldn't believe that Nancy Harding would go to such lengths for Simon Layton. Even more unbelievable was that she would have people torture me just to appease Simon Layton. I spoke numbly. Since you two love each other so much, why don't I step aside? Isn't that good? Nancy Harding's face looked as if a secret had been exposed. Her eyes wandered to the side. What nonsense are you talking about, Zion? Be good, stop this. I've never thought about divorcing you. Simon and I. But I want to divorce you. I interrupted her. Nancy Harding's face turned ugly. Simon Layton, on the other hand, laughed mockingly. Zion, where will you go if you leave here? The company belongs to Nancy now, and you're lame with a crippled hand. Are you planning to live on the streets? His words hit me like a boulder. But when Nancy Harding heard this, she looked at me in surprise. What? You're lame? What happened? And your hand? I followed her gaze downward. I sneered and raised my hand. Don't you already know all this? Why are you so surprised? When Nancy Harding saw my grotesquely twisted pinky finger, she immediately straightened up and walked towards me. I don't know anything about this, she exclaimed. She doesn't know? How is that possible? The voice I heard after each brutal beating was undoubtedly Nancy's. What's really going on here? I demanded. She quickly grabbed my hand as I was about to lower it. I didn't miss the disbelief in her eyes, but I still chose to push her hand away. I pursed my lips and gave Nancy a long, hard look. Whether you're involved or not doesn't matter anymore, I said quietly. Nancy, I'm disabled now, whatever the truth may be. Whether or not it was Nancy who ordered those beatings, it no longer mattered that much, because she was the one who tricked me into going to that dark room in the first place. If it weren't for her so-called wifely duty to punish me for my stubbornness towards Simon Layton, I wouldn't have ended up like this. I don't want anything anymore. The company is yours. I'll leave with nothing. Just tell me where my parents are buried in the churchyard, and I'll have someone draw up the contract tomorrow. My face was deathly pale, and my stomach ached dully. It was an old ailment I'd developed during those 3 years in that dark room, eating half-cooked mashed potatoes and cold, rotten cabbage leaves every day. A bowl of porridge so thick it was nearly impossible to swallow. Nancy's face showed a panic I hadn't seen in a long time. Zion Bailey, I really don't know anything about this. Are you saying you don't believe me? Nancy, do you really think Zion would be willing to divorce you? Simon interjected. He's just saying this on purpose. Don't take it seriously. Have you forgotten how he took the blame for your project mistake? He was willing to resign and take all the responsibility rather than expose you. Zion would never actually divorce you, Nancy. You're all he has left. Simon was right. Back then, after my parents passed away, Nancy was truly all I had. Later, when Nancy made a serious mistake at work, she didn't want to be fired. Her dream was to become a powerful businesswoman, and she didn't want to be looked down upon by those she once despised. The day she came to me, she was crying her eyes out. Zion, please help me. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a new life in our family. You've given so much to the company. Even if you made this mistake, the worst that could happen is getting scolded by the board. If you voluntarily resign and I step up to take responsibility, the company will still be ours. You've worked so hard for all these years. Let me help you now and take on this burden. You can stay at home and take care of our baby, okay? I sacrificed everything for her and the baby. But in the end, we lost that child anyway. The day Simon Layton returned to the country, Nancy went to pick him up at the airport but got into a car accident. When I arrived at the scene, I saw her lying in a pool of blood. Nancy suddenly seemed to realize something, and her face twisted with disgust. Zion Bailey, how childish can you be, trying to manipulate me like this? If you really had the guts to divorce me, I might actually respect you a bit more. All right, if there's nothing else, just go back and rest. Simon and I have work to do. Unlike you who just sits around doing nothing. Nancy led Simon into the study, and he shut the door firmly behind them. As for what they were actually doing in there, whether it was work or something else, I no longer cared. I took out my old hiking backpack from the guest room and packed a few of my things. When I left, the two of them still hadn't come out. Only faint noises filtered through the cracks of the door to my ears. As the door slammed shut, I felt reborn. I made a call to an old friend. In less than 10 minutes, he drove to the estate and took me away. Nancy Harding is truly ruthless. For these 3 years, I've been trying to find out your whereabouts through her. She only said you went abroad with no set return date. I saw her getting close to Simon Layton and thought you were just traveling to clear your head. I never imagined she'd dare to do something illegal. I looked at him solemnly. Ian, can I ask you for a few favors? Of course. Help me find someone to draft a divorce decree, and also find out where my parents are buried. Ian agreed readily, then hesitated before looking at me again. Are you planning to let Nancy and Simon off just like that? My voice deepened. Those 3 dark years, the torture I endured, had left me barely human. I couldn't possibly let this go so easily. Ian, I don't have any evidence at the moment. However, I suspect someone will soon deliver that evidence to my doorstep. Ian was highly efficient. The next morning, Nancy called, but I rejected it. As for where my parents were buried, I waited a week but still had no results. Ian brought in a professional medical team for me. After the examination, everyone looked regretful. It's a bit late, but we can try. I clung to this like a lifeline. No matter how difficult, I had to fight with all my might. In my dreams, I was constantly plagued by nightmares. When I woke up, my clothes were soaked with sweat. Finally, Ian handed me a file with a grave expression. Zion, you were right. Simon Layton does have a connection to your uncle and aunt. I opened the file, and the first thing I saw were the gruesome photos from my parents' car accident. I traced every corner of the photos. Felt like my heart was being carved with a knife. As I had suspected, Simon's return to the UK wasn't on a whim. He came with a purpose. My parents were originally prosecutors at the court. That year, the biggest criminal case they cracked was the Layton Group's collusion with officials to seize people's land. They had even killed someone at the construction site and covered up the crime. Turned out Simon was the child of that couple. No wonder he left the country without a word back then. That night, I received a video from an unknown account in my email. The people in it were pixelated. I watched the entire video trembling. At the end of the video, I was pinned to the ground, someone's foot pressing down hard on me. One of my hands was raised high. My right little finger was being bent backwards, bit by bit. Say it. Do you admit you were wrong? You're nothing but a dog, Zion. Look at yourself. How can you compare to Simon? In the video, I was writhing in pain. The person in front of me was even more excited. It was then that I realized this person's build was so similar to Simon's. If the person who tortured me back then was indeed Simon, then he must have been wearing a voice changer at the time. This would explain why Nancy was completely unaware of what happened to me in that dark room. But even if she knew, what difference would it make? Nancy was so in love with Simon. This video, if not for Simon's desire to vent and humiliate me, would never have fallen into my hands. If Nancy knew of the existence of this video, she would certainly help Simon get rid of it. I saved the video. I sought help from my old tech-savvy friends to crack the code. If there was one video, there must be others. It didn't surprise me that Nancy Harding could find me. After all, my social circle had always been small. I had introduced her to every one of my close friends. I was living in one of the houses owned by Ian Hughes. When I went downstairs for a follow-up appointment at the hospital, I ran into her. She had been waiting for a while. Nancy's eyes flickered with excitement and dissatisfaction when she saw me. "Zion Bailey, you didn't reply to my messages. I thought you were dead." I ignored her presence and tried to walk past her. But she grabbed my arm with her sharp nails. "What's your problem? I told you I won't divorce you. What more do you want? Can't you stand Simon in your sight?" "Fine, fine. I'll find him another place to live. Is that good enough? Can you stop making a fuss?" Couldn't believe it. My determination to divorce Nancy was still seen as jealousy in her eyes. I shook off her hand. "Nancy, I think you've misunderstood. I want to divorce you because I find you disgusting, not because of your so-called jealousy." Her expression immediately turned sour. "Zion Bailey, say that again." I looked straight into her eyes and enunciated each word clearly. I said, "I find you disgusting." Nancy had no idea how severe the psychological trauma was from those 3 years of torment. If she had paid attention, she would have noticed that even now, as I faced her, my whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Those words etched into my bones. "Zion, do you still hate him?" It felt like someone was hammering nails into my head every day, trying to drive those words deep into my mind. Hate? How could I not hate them? Ian had found where my parents were buried, but I never had the chance to see them one last time. "Zion, you must stay strong. There's still so much to do," he said, patting my shoulder with his large hand. Looking at the overgrown grass before me, my heart was filled with anger and helplessness. Simon had taken my parents' ashes back to his hometown. They were buried near a sewage treatment plant, surrounded by a foul stench. I had no idea where exactly they were laid to rest. "Dig. We must find my parents no matter what," I said, my voice choked with tears, but my eyes blazing red. I would never let Simon off the hook. He thought he was untouchable now that he had Nancy's backing. But he had no idea that Nancy's current position wasn't due to her carefully crafted image as a strong, independent woman. I doubled my efforts in physical therapy, and finally my legs showed some improvement. I secretly returned to the company and retrieved a document. Nancy would never have guessed that I hadn't destroyed the document with her name on it. It wasn't kept as a precaution, but by sheer coincidence. An efficient female secretary had filed it away as a routine document. 3 years ago, on that day, I discovered this document just seconds before Nancy called me home. I had planned to destroy it the next day, but fate had other plans. I took the document home with me, but not long after I left, I ran into Simon. I stopped in my tracks. He had been promoted to vice president by Nancy and was beaming with pride. "I thought I was seeing things," he said. "Zion Bailey, are you here to see Nancy?" He raised an eyebrow smugly. I didn't want to give myself away. Where is she? What a shame. It's all her fault for clinging to me so tightly. I'm afraid she won't be able to get out of bed today." Simon Layton's eyes crinkled with amusement. He reached up to adjust his shirt collar, revealing a trail of love bites. "Is that so? I'll come back another day then." I took a couple of steps, then turned back to look at Simon Layton. "If she really loves you that much, you should advise her to sign the divorce decree soon. And tell her to stop bothering me. It's quite annoying." A flash of anger suddenly ignited in Simon Layton's eyes. "Zion Bailey, you cripple. What are you so smug about?" Seeing him angry made me feel incredibly satisfied. This was just the beginning. The surprises I had in store for Simon Layton were still to come. Sure enough, it wasn't long before I saw Simon Layton in the news. His family's burial plot in the churchyard had been vandalized, but the culprits couldn't be found. The local report only mentioned that it was suspected to be a group of grave robbers who thought it was a historical site. After destroying part of it, they realized they had made a mistake. The camera showed Simon Layton rushing frantically towards where his parents were buried. I caught a glimpse of Nancy Harding's coat hem. With just one glance, one turn of her body, I knew it was her. Seeing that Nancy Harding wasn't in the city, I anonymously sent documents to the email inboxes of the board members. For years, people had been unhappy with Nancy Harding. In the past, with me strategizing behind her back, things had remained stable. Even though I had resigned, I knew the company couldn't function without my decision-making. In the 3 years without me, the company had almost been run into the ground by Nancy Harding. It was nothing more than a house of cards about to collapse. Zion, come work with me. I've always respected your abilities. If you can help me, name your price. Ian Hughes tried to get me drunk, glass after glass, trying to persuade me to collaborate with him. I pushed away his glass and pointed to my not-so-agile leg. I'm still on medication. Can't drink. Ian, you don't need to try so hard to convince me. Without you, I'd struggle to do many things on my own. Besides, haven't we been working together all along? Ian Hughes excitedly patted me on the back. You don't need to be so formal with me. By the way, any results from that video? I traced the rim of my glass, my eyes dark. Just wait a bit longer. He stared at me for a long while, then suddenly sighed deeply. Zion, you really should see that therapist. I lowered my gaze, avoiding his eyes. Avoiding it isn't the solution. The Zion Bailey I know always faces challenges head-on. Suddenly, the glass shattered in my hand. I had gripped it too tightly. Sorry. The table was covered in glass shards, reflecting countless versions of me. To me, each reflection seemed to wear a different expression. Fear, terror, grimace, and unease. Zion, no matter what, your mate's here by your side. Don't worry, this therapist is very famous abroad, and she's quite attractive too. It won't hurt to give it a try. His teasing tone made me smile. All right, I promise you I will. Ian Hughes excitedly handed me her business card. Bella Wilkinson. Judging by the name, she sounded like a gentle person. The next day, after finishing my work, I found myself fiddling with the business card Ian had given me. I glanced at the watch on my left wrist. Finally, I made up my mind to go and see her. To be honest, I've lost count of how many nights it's been. I always struggle to fall asleep, tossing and turning with vivid dreams. I lay on the recliner and closed my eyes. In an instant, I felt like I was back in that dark underground chamber. Various insults and vile words echoed in my ears. Mr. Bailey? Mr. Bailey. I snapped my eyes open. I saw Bella Wilkinson's serene face. Beneath her calm exterior, her brow furrowed. It's worse than I thought. But don't worry, as long as you trust me, it's not a big problem. I took the glass of water she handed me. Thank you. You're welcome. Actually, we've met before. I looked up at her in surprise. She blinked, seeming to think for a moment. When we were children, I knew your parents. I'm very sorry about what happened to them. I had no recollection of her in my memory. She seemed to notice this. She gave me a gentle smile. You always liked to sit alone working on A-level maths problems. When my parents brought me to your house, your mom asked you to play with me. You didn't even look at me, just handed me a stool. I looked at her apologetically. She shook her head and suddenly became quite serious. Your parents were wonderful people. I'm sure they'd be heartbroken to see you like this now. So, if not for yourself, for their sake, you must try to break through this darkness and find the light. At that moment, Bella seemed to radiate a kind of light. Looking into her eyes, I felt I could see hope. I clenched my fist. Thank you. After my third therapy session, I took Bella to a restaurant for dinner. But as soon as we sat down, I saw Nancy Harding and Simon Layton come in. Nancy also saw me and Bella beside me. Her previously cheerful face instantly turned cold as ice. Nancy strode quickly towards our table. Zion Bailey. No wonder you want a divorce. You've been cheating on me all along. You hussy. How dare you seduce my husband? Do you know who I am? With that, Nancy raised her hand to strike. I instinctively stood up and grabbed her wrist tightly. Looking into her eyes, I felt nothing but disgust. Go be crazy somewhere else. I let go of her hand. She stumbled backwards unexpectedly. Simon stepped forward and caught her in his arms. You pushed me for her? Nancy looked at me in shock. Bella suddenly let out a laugh. This gentleman seems quite practiced at holding your waist. What's your relationship with him? Nancy awkwardly pushed Simon's hand away. That's none of your business. Zion Bailey, you wanted a divorce, right? Fine. I agree. But remember, it's not that you don't want me, it's that Nancy Harding, don't want you anymore. With that, she glanced sideways at Bella. I don't know what you see in this useless man. He's just my leftovers. How could anyone think he's worth anything? Zion's quite impressive, isn't he? Even as a disabled person, he can still charm women. Not just anyone could manage that. Bella turned to look at Simon. She spoke coldly. I'd say you're quite impressive too. You're not exactly young anymore, but you've mastered the art of being a homewrecker. These days, you see all sorts, but a man as trashy as you is truly rare. Simon narrowed his eyes at Bella. I silently moved to stand in front of her. Simon Layton, are you that free? Have you finished restoring your family burial plot in the churchyard? Zion Bailey was furious. You, he exclaimed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't fathom why his family's burial plot in the churchyard was so unlucky. Let's go. Why waste time talking to him? Zion Bailey, I'll be waiting for you to come begging. After they left, Bella Wilkinson looked at me in surprise. Begging her for what? I snorted. She probably thinks I'll be on my knees begging for her forgiveness, pleading with her not to agree to my so-called joke about divorce. Bella clicked her tongue. After a moment, she took a sip of her coffee. She let out an exasperated sigh. I really want to give her my business card. I burst out laughing. Bella stared at me for a long time. I gradually stopped smiling. Zion, you should smile more often. You look very handsome when you smile. After that day, I indeed received the divorce papers signed by Nancy Harding. I quickly signed my name. I was afraid she might change her mind if I delayed even a second. We agreed on a time to finalize the divorce at the court. During the 1-month waiting period, Nancy Harding continued to issue commands to me with her haughty attitude. If you just bow your head, I'll forgive you this time. Zion Bailey, just bow your head. My indifference made her grind her teeth in frustration. On the day we went to get the divorce decree, Simon Layton was waiting outside the court with a large bouquet of roses. Humph, Nancy, look at Zion Bailey. What does he remind you of? Ha! What could he possibly look like? Like a drowned rat, ha ha ha. Nancy Harding turned her head and glanced at me sideways. Indeed! Nancy Harding drove off in a cloud of dust. My foot had actually improved a lot due to continuous rehabilitation training. I watched the row of car exhaust fumes. Silently, I made a phone call. You can start now. When I went for my 7th psychological therapy session, Nancy Harding got into trouble. To be precise, it was her company that was in trouble. The person in charge of a project she had led the investment in had absconded with the funds. The police were called but couldn't find the person. By the time the company realized what had happened, both Nancy Harding and Simon Layton had disappeared without a trace. Debts were tallied one by one. All the money under her name was frozen. No one knew where the two of them had gone. Their former home was splattered with red paint. Countless people stood at the doorstep, cursing furiously. Simon Layton's disappearance was unexpected to me. I hadn't anticipated that he would leave before the police could act. Even more surprising was that this departure lasted 5 years. 5 years brought enormous changes. My leg, when walking slowly, was almost like a normal person's. Although my little finger could never fully recover, I no longer felt insecure about it. I got married to Bella Wilkinson. Our daughter was born in the 2nd year of our marriage. I acquired the company that was once mine. After all, it was everything I had worked hard to build. That dark period of memories was no longer a weapon that could break me. Until a phone call came. Simon Layton had been arrested. When I rushed to the police station, I watched a video recording. It showed Nancy Harding tortured beyond recognition, but the date on the video wasn't from this year. According to the criminal's statement, By the second year after they fled to northern Myanmar, Nancy Harding was already near death. Then Simon Layton sold all her organs through various channels. Nancy Harding was dead. Perhaps until her death she couldn't understand why Simon Layton, whom she once deeply loved and trusted, would do this to her. But I knew. I had accidentally found my father's notebook, and from that book I learned. In the case back then, there was a behind-the-scenes informant. He provided many clues and materials to bring down his competitor. That person's surname was Harding. I thanked the police and turned to leave the station. Actually, years ago, I had received a call from an unknown number, but apart from suppressed crying, nothing else could be heard. I looked up at the bright sun. The scorching sunlight beat down on me. "Darling, what would you like to eat today?" A smile played at the corners of my eyes. "Anything you make is good."